See y'all, made some wrong turns, had to detour. Any concern, I let it burn like an R&B song. Be gone. My license is ill. I beast these boys. Who you trying to feast on? Please, y'all. I strive for the Grammy, ride for my family. You wouldn't put your niece on. Keep gone. 100 miles and running, ain't turning down for nothing. It's winter and the heat on. Put these beats on like that hospital monitor. Whatever that machine called. Diesel like I b-ball, even in a free fall. Having a fall back would never be my default. Ask your kinfolk, I've been dope when all I had was a gram like me, mom.
Once upon a time, I was just a little guy. Now I'm bigger than a motherfucker, sicker than a motherfucker, finger to the sky. Once upon a time, I was getting high. Now I'm
3, 2, 1, showtime. Welcome to Party and Politics. I am your host, Tony Vincent. With me, I have a special guest tonight, Jake Bass. Again, thank you so much for being on tonight, man. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Good, man. I got, obviously a lot of questions, a lot of things. The first thing that I thought of, that really interested me is, I listened to some of the artists that you work with, whether it be Sean Forbes, whether it be Mama Yaya, different things like that. These artists definitely seem to have a very unique thing about them. Not only, who they are, but just like vocally and stuff like that. Now, as like a producer, is that what kind of attracted you to work with them? Or is it, let's start with Sean Forbes first. Like, how did that whole thing, that relationship, you guys working together, how did all that get started?
Yeah, that is a wild story, actually. But yes, to answer to answer the overall question, the uniqueness is definitely a part of the reason. There's a lot of other things as well, but that is definitely one of the big reasons. With Sean in particular, our story goes way back to when I was 15 years old, actually. Wow. I met him, in 2005, around then. He was interning at the recording studio, and he had come across a beat CD at the time, and he saw that it just had the word beats on it. So he stole it, which is obviously a big no-no.
Yep.
Because at the time he was interning at 54 Sound in Detroit, and Marshall was working there, Eminem was working there, D12, 50, all those guys, all the Shady Records guys were working there. So taking anything from the studio, was a one strike, you're out.
Right, I'm sure, yeah.
Type of situation. But he took it, nobody knew that he took it, and he listened to it at home and was like, okay, I need to write to this right now. And he started writing to it, and then I guess what he was writing was really, really good, and was like, I have to confess, because I need to know who wrote these beats, because the songs that I just wrote are really, really awesome. And so he went back into the studio and confessed and said he stole the CD, and everyone's cool over there, so they were glad that he confessed. And they were like, well, let me see. Well, that CD was done by Jake. He's 15.
Oh, wow.
And he was like, great, I don't care, I need to meet him. And so it was at that time, our A&R at the time, Scott Guy, had reached out to me and was like, hey, there's this hip-hop artist who is deaf and stole one of your beat CDs and started writing to it and wants to meet you. Would you be interested? And I was like, absolutely. Him being deaf had nothing to do with it. He sounded like a really cool dude, and I wanted to meet him anyways. So I did, and granted, being 15, I couldn't drive, so I had to have my mom drive me to the studio, which was hilarious in itself. And so we went up to the studio, and I met him, and he's got a hearing aid, and I had seen him around town but I never met him. And I was like, "What's going on? I hear you like one of the records that I did, or all of them that are on this beat CD. You know, what's that about?" And he basically was like, "I wrote to every single one of them, and I would love to share my lyrics with you." And I was like, "Okay, let's go. Let me hear what you got." And him being deaf, him having the deaf accent, all of that stuff didn't mean anything to me. I knew right then and there that he was hungry and passionate and he had something to say. And when he started sharing what he had written to me, with me, I was like, okay, let's actually get into the studio and see if we can collaborate on something. So that was when I started messing around with some other beats that I had in mind while working with him. And it wasn't long after that meeting where we got together and we wrote our very first song, which was called I'm Deaf, which was his debut single, which kind of went viral back in 2010 when we put it out. And that really jump-started his musical career and got us a ton of opportunities. And that was the very first song we wrote. It was just one of those things where we just clicked. You know, me doing the music, him doing the lyrics, and then eventually it grew into us doing the music together, him playing live drums and, you know, doing some programming. And it just was chemistry from the get-go.
Wow. Now with that, going back to that beat CD that kind of started all that,
yes.
So like, here's my question. Cause like right now, your most recent project, the Stay Your Ass Home, you know, that's just music, right? So that's not,
that is a perfect example of a beat CD right there.
So that's kind of what, when you made that, your intention wasn't, oh, I'm going to have a rapper rap over this, or a singer. It's just, hey, this is just supposed to be music. It's not supposed to be vocals or anything like that.
Just instrumental, you know, tunes that you can vibe out to or do the dishes to,
right?
Whatever you want to do. Can I swear on this show?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh fuck yeah. Okay. Sorry, this has been pretty hard for me to hold back.
Oh no, absolutely don't hold back. We don't hold back here.
I wanted to ask. I wasn't sure if this was for the children or not. So yeah, that's a perfect example of what I used to do back in the day. I used to make beat CDs all the time. That's how I would play my beats for people. It was from CDs. You know, I would burn CDs and play it for Sean. Even after we met, I would come up with more records and I would share with him a CD. And, you know, the D12 guys, I would do the same thing. Make a track list, you know?
Yeah. So, burn but them. With them though, was it, because obviously like when you're making a, you know, I guess the line between a song and a beat really is thin, right? Depending on what you're trying to do with it. But like when you start creating something, are you like, oh, this is going to be for vocals, or it's just like, I don't know what I'm doing yet. I'm just kind of wherever it takes me kind of thing.
Yeah. Most of the time it's stream of conscious. What's going to come out is going to come out. I have no control over it. That's my subconscious or soul or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And I'll get to a certain point, whether it's 30 minutes in or an hour into creating and composing a track, where I'll know, okay, this is perfect for this rapper or this singer. I think I should hold off on some musical elements until I get some vocals on there, because it just feels like something's missing and it's a vocal. Yeah. And other times I'll come up with tracks where they're just so powerful and so hot that I'm like, the music needs to speak for himself. I don't want anything getting in the way of that. Yeah. You know, or I might have a lot of melodic stuff happening where vocals might get in the way of that. So I, will keep it instrumental.
Yeah. Now with that, because that's a perfect segue into kind of the stuff I wanted to ask, about Sean Forbes, about like Mama Yaya, where there's sounds. Yes. I know that you said like with him, it wasn't so much about like, as you call it, like the deaf accent, but his, rap voice is still unique, whether it's because he's deaf or not because he's deaf. Mama Yaya, also very unique. These aren't like stereotypical, like whether it's a rap song, pop song, R&B song, singing song. They have like, are you seeing them almost as instruments as much as they are vocalists? Because that's like the vibe I get when I listen to it, like your selection of.
Yes, absolutely. Because I mean, the voice is an instrument, and being able to control it like they can is huge. It's very hard to discover your sound.
Yeah.
And that's a feeling too. And so I pick up on that, and that is interesting to me. And so I can craft music around that and make it fit better than, somebody that sounds like everybody else,
Yeah. No, and
and
that
there's
makes
times
sense.
for that. But the people that I work closely with or are under my label, that's what I like to look for.
Yeah, there's a certain distinct thing that obviously sets them apart clearly. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
that's what I feel for sure.
Yes,
So,
absolutely. I'm glad you pick up on that.
yeah, no, it was one of the biggest things I noticed when I started seeing some of the stuff that you were posting and stuff. There's
Yeah.
definitely something unique about it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
I
sorry.
was just gonna say, in 3 seconds, I want you to know what the record is, or who it is, or who did it.
Yeah, and obviously you're doing something different. Like I hear when you're making a Mama Yaya record, the production is a little different. The Sean Forbes stuff is a little bit more amped up, a little bit more drum heavy, stuff like that, so.
Yeah, and that's a rare thing in what I do, where I am composing and producing, where I can camouflage into those different genres, because Sean's gonna have more of a rock hip hop heavy feel than a Mama Yaya record would, but it's still me.
Yeah.
I just go to different places. That's what, is best for the record. That's my job.
Do you feel like it's because obviously there's producers who seem to get pigeonholed, whether it's like, okay, you start out as a hip hop producer and then that's all they do, or a rock producer, you can pick whatever genre. Did you want to make sure that you did not get pigeonholed into a specific genre? Because it seems like, the music that you're throwing out there. I mean, even, I was listening to the Stay Your Ass Home when I was actually cleaning while I was listening to it. So it was funny you said the thing about the dishes. But like, all of a sudden the saxophone is coming in out of nowhere.
Right.
You got
my jazz
the guitar.
Record. I have a whole jazz record that's kicking ass right now.
Yeah.
And, that's the same guy who's doing a Sean Forbes record and doing hip hop and whatnot. So I just am making music that comes to me. Really. I'm inspired and influenced by a lot of different genres.
Yeah.
And so it really depends on what I'm feeling at the time. It'll come out as a jazz record, or it'll come out as a pop record, or a hip hop record, or a rock record.
Yeah,
it really depends.
And that's clearly a lot more free. I mean, obviously I don't want to speak on anyone else's behalf. I never try to do that. But from like one of my biggest frustrations when I talk about music and stuff is like, I feel like a lot of times people that get super, whether you're an artist yourself or you're a fan of a certain genre, you like don't let yourself explore some of this other stuff that's out there. And it's like, this stuff is music before it's anything else. The genre,
absolutely,
putting it in a box came after. This is not, it's just meant to be something that makes you bob your head, dance to it, feel good. I mean, the genre whole thing is just something a human being is categorizing it with. It's not
absolutely, No, you're right. You're right about all of that.
Yeah.
And my main goal is to make music that connects with people and makes an impact, that they can feel it and really, connect with the emotion of it. And it doesn't matter what the genre is. I got Ryan Scott, and we do a lot of hip hop pop records. I've got Jesse Palter that I work with, and we do a lot of singer songwriter stuff. And it's the stuff that comes out that tugs at the heartstrings, whether that means you're angry, happy, sad, playful, it's gotta do that.
Yeah.
And then the genre, like you said, comes to play after that.
Yeah, no, that's 100%. I feel that way. Now, I wanted to start with the present because that's the stuff that I really was like, that's what really got me fascinated about the stuff that you were doing. But obviously I want to, go dig in the past, see the kind of, where everything started. And the biggest thing that I think I want to start with, because you started the conversation off with bringing up Studio 54, Sound 54, 50 Cent, Eminem, all that kind of stuff. And obviously, your background with that. One thing that I noticed about you versus some other people I know kind of within the industry, maybe a little closer in the circle of people, I'll put it that way, whose parents or siblings or whatever are from that entertainment world. It seems like some people try to shy away from you know, like acting like they have any relation to someone else who's in it. But you seem to have a really positive, like fun kind of look. This is who I'm related to. This is it. You don't seem to shy away from it at all. And did you were you always like that, where you're like, I'm just this is the life I have, I'm embracing, I'm not going to run away from it? Or was there ever a point in time where you were like kind of weird about the situation? Like, how did, explain that dynamic?
I in my life, I don't think I had an opportunity to, because Eminem became the biggest global superstar for a period in time in my life. So it was impossible to do that.
Yeah.
And I also embrace it because I grew up with it. I was around it before that was even anything to the world. And it was just something really special to, my dad and uncle and our family and everyone in the smaller circle, and, really believing in him and in the project that they were working on. So, of course, I'm going to always embrace it because it's a part of my upbringing. In a time where I have memories, everything popped off when I was around 10 years old. So it was something that I remember the 8 Mile studio and him coming through and working there. And, that was, I say it all the time, that was my daycare, because my parents couldn't afford an actual daycare. So my dad had to take me with him.
Yeah.
And so it was, in my DNA, whether I liked it or not.
Yeah.
So I'm obviously going to fully embrace it.
Yeah, no, and I think that makes you way more approachable than, some other people I've known or met, and different things like that. You're very like, happy. You seem like to have a very outgoing personality. And I feel like a lot, well, I mean, from what I know, obviously I don't know you too in depth, but just from my takeaway. But I know a lot of people that, I don't know if it's a bitterness, I don't know what it is, but some people have more of like a weird kind of thing with it. And again, I can never speak on anyone's experience except my own. So, I'm interested in that. But because you did mention the whole thing about when things popped off, my curiosity is, so pre-Eminem, your dad and his brother, were they like having to work? Was Eminem their big break as well? Like, were they having to work?
Absolutely.
So they weren't full-time, like getting paid for producing before that, right?
I mean, they were getting little things here and there, but they struggled for a long time. My dad always instilled that side of things in me from a young age, because I was witnessing a lot of it. He, really made it important for me to know that he really worked, he really tried, he really wanted to be successful his whole entire life. And it didn't happen until he was 38 years old.
Yeah.
And I got to see that. I got to see what could happen.
Yeah.
And I got to see things when they weren't happening.
Yeah.
You
got to see the both.
He was selling shoes when I was a kid, so it wasn't like, it wasn't always the way it is. It wasn't
an overnight success, as they call it.
It was not. It looked like that. It really did. But Marshall was signed to our family business in 1995.
Yeah.
So it was a good 4 years, almost 5 years, until it happened.
Yeah.
And then it was like boom, 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 boom.
How was like, yeah, which
it's
I'm
wild.
I'm sure like for the roller coaster ride, because like me and, obviously 99% of people are on the outside of that seeing it. You got to kind of see the inner workings. So like, but for you, because I mean, you were a kid, you weren't like working, on an album. You were still like a kid. You were just a person, you were like a, doing kid things. When did you know, like, was there like a moment where it was like, that was life then, this is life now? Like, was there like some clear defining moment where you remember like just boom, things are different now?
Yeah, definitely. It was, one of the things that I always recall from the early days was going to 7-Eleven before we would go to the studio. We would stop at 7-Eleven before a session, that my dad and uncle had, and we'd always pick up lunch or dinner, and that was what we ate.
Yeah.
It was particularly the 7-Eleven tuna fish sandwich in
Okay.
the
Can't
blue
go wrong.
styrofoam. The most dangerous and worst thing ever to put in your body, but that's what it was. So it was tuna fish sandwiches and Slim Jims from 7-Eleven. And so that was a frequent thing.
Yeah.
And then when things happened, we went out to like one of the nicest restaurants, which was Lully's. And I remember going to that restaurant. It was, they still had it downtown at the time. And I was like, oh my God, like this is what lobster looks like and steak. Like this doesn't make sense. Like I shouldn't even be here as a kid. And I was the only kid there.
Yeah.
And I knew, okay, this is a different world.
Yeah.
It must mean something, but it wasn't fast. It wasn't overnight. It was a gradual thing, my parents were getting a divorce at the time, and I was literally living with my dad and my grandma's house. It wasn't even a house. It was a condo.
Okay.
when the My Name Is video premiered on TRL.
Wow.
And it was like, oh my God, it's going to be the biggest video in the country at the time. And like, we're still living at my grandma's house right now.
Yeah.
So that is why I'm the way I am when it comes to all that stuff.
Yeah, because you got to kind of be part of that build and see it. And, it wasn't like you were just born into it. You got to kind of,
I was not.
It could have went any way, as someone who
could have, yes.
And so it's, that is pretty wild. What did, were you always wanting to be in music as well? Or was it did it something click later on?
So I was 8 years old when the music bug got me, and that was before Eminem popped off.
Yeah.
It started with me playing drums. I got drums for Hanukkah when I was 8 years old, because obviously my dad wanted to see if I had it, if I was interested. I had always loved music because I didn't know any different, but I didn't play anything until I was 8, and so my parents got me a drum set, and he showed me a simple pattern for during Hanukkah one night, and I was like, okay, and it was just a hot mess, obviously really, really bad, and he was like, you'll get it, don't worry, here's the pattern, simple.
Yeah.
And he was like, you work on it, I'm gonna go upstairs. And I started practicing it, and he always tells me the story. About 30 minutes later, he hears me going,
oh, wow.
And he runs downstairs and was like, what was that? And I'm like, look, I think I got it. and he was like, yep, he definitely has it. And so they got me piano lessons, and I hated that.
Yeah.
I learned everything by ear. But I tried, and I hated it because I was picking up the piano really, really fast, a lot faster than the lesson was. So they would ask me, as an 8-9-year-old at that time, to play Mary Had a Little Lamb, the basic bullshit. And I would master that, and then I would come in and be like, check this out. My dad taught me this lick, and it was like the piano part to Kim at the time. Wow. Like he had just written that piece and taught me it, and I was like, okay, let me play it. And I was so proud, and I brought it to my teacher, and they were like, no, you need to stick to the lesson plan. And I was like, fuck this, I'm out.
Yeah.
And also that song didn't come out yet, so it's not like we knew that song was going to be anything either.
Yeah.
But I had mastered that song on piano, and I was like, okay, boom, let's go on to guitar. So I started playing guitar, and I just picked that up, and then bass and percussion. So I played everything naturally by ear. It just was there. I didn't really have a choice in that department. I just had it.
It had to be hard too, like taking lessons from somebody when your dad is a literal professional in the highest degree, and you're learning. I mean, if you learn from him, then really who else can, I mean, of course, I can definitely see where the headbutting would be there, and just
it lasted 2 weeks, that class, and I was done.
Yeah,
it was just like straight into a master class at home.
Was your dad always, because obviously, like, one thing that interests me is obviously Eminem, for example, like using him specifically. Mm-hmm. Obviously not a clean, if you get the edited version of his CD, I might as well as get an instrumental.
Boy,
you know.
Yeah, there was no edited versions in my world.
So, like, was he always like kind of open about showing you stuff, or did he ever try censoring anything for you? Or?
Never censored anything. And my mom was cool with that, because she really didn't have a choice. It was just the world we were in. She did not like it at all, obviously.
Yeah.
But my dad starts the record off by saying, you could suck his fucking cock.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, as a 10-year-old.
Because he did the radio voice for the public service announcement. Yeah.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, on all the records.
Yeah. So
he starts it off, and it's like, okay, what are you going to do? It's just 0 to 60. Yeah. This is who we are. Yeah. But I never repeated anything. I knew not to repeat anything, and it was just one of those things. Like, this is who we are. This is how we make our living. It's real.
Yeah.
The swearing is real. The drugs are real. It's just what it is. It's rock and roll.
Yeah. The pain that it all comes from, all that kind of stuff.
Yes, absolutely.
Here's like an interesting question. So, one of the things I guess that makes my life one of my unique things is my mom's side of the family is Jewish, dad's side of the family, Italian Catholic. They're the first, people of their bloodlines to essentially marry outside the tribe, if you will. So amazing. My whole dynamic growing up was trying to figure, things out a bit. But one thing I do notice, and you could probably relate to someone who grew up Jewish and stuff, the Jewish community, and there definitely seems to be a little bit more, just, and I don't mean conservative like politically, but just conservative as people, more, they're not aggressive, not out there. So did you feel like, was there ever like any issues from like relatives when this stuff started happening? Like, when this kind of started taking off, and that your dad was kind of a part of this, potty mouth, so if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, my parents were just as bad when it came to the language.
Yeah.
So that wasn't surprising. There obviously were some family members that didn't get it, didn't like it. But years later they're at the Eminem concerts when he's in town. So it's, it's one of those things. But yeah, it's a unique, strange thing, to be in that circle of, entertainment where swearing is the brand, is one of the brands of things, Oh, but that's the thing. Like, it was always clear, as soon as everything happened, it wasn't until he stopped giving a fuck, and it's all out there, he says it all the time, that people started giving a fuck.
Yeah.
So that whole mentality, they all were in that mentality. They all were like, this
let it
is
all hang out.
It's got to work.
Yeah.
Fuck it.
Yeah.
Fuck what everybody else thinks. And that's when it happened. It took that long.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny how things can click like that, because obviously, Infinite, which was made, this was 96, right? When Infinite came out.
Correct. Yes.
And that was obviously him being more, not swearing really. Some people call it a Christian album. I don't know if I'd call it a Christian album, but, but
no, I don't think so.
Yeah. But definitely not, the same thing. And he, completely erupted after that. And it just, with
the EP, but that still didn't, that didn't pop off like everybody had hoped it would. It took some momentum, and it built from there, locally, and started to spread. But it was from that it really got everyone's attention.
And so that was
97.
Yeah.
Going into 98.
Yeah. Wow. So this was something you never like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like you always felt like you were in line with, like you never, like, you know how a lot of times kids rebel against their parents.
Yeah.
So like, you know, I always think of, not to relate that to your life, but just a stereotype that's funny. I don't know if you ever saw that, like MTV Truth or something. Like there was this, my dad's a rapper. And like this kid became like he was like a 40-something-year-old rapper, and the kid became like a super gothic rocker and was like super against rap. And that was like a classic episode. But you were like, were you ever like, you know, kind of feeling like rebellious or like going the opposite way? Or were you always like, you know, hey, this is cool, I'm down for the ride, I'm not gonna, you know, complain, I'm not gonna.
No, I never felt that, because like I said, it just, when it happened, so many things happened after that really fast. You know, it was the first album, it was the second album, it was the Grammys, it was D12, it was 50 Cent, it was the 8 Mile movie. You know, it was all of those things combined. So there was no time to not be in that world.
Yeah. No, absolutely. You know? Did other
period.
Kids ever annoy you? Like whether it was
Oh yeah, all the time. That was an interesting thing to deal with. And the best thing my parents did was keep me in the same exact school, same public school. That was the best thing, because all of my friends and the people that I were around, and even my teachers, they got to see it happen. Yeah, like in real time. You know, it's one of those things that you see only in movies or TV shows. You know, like that doesn't happen to somebody from Oak Park, Michigan.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
But it was wild. They respected it. They understood it. You know, there were things where in the beginning it was like, okay, my dad had to go to LA, you know, for a while, and my parents were getting a divorce, and my teachers had to really look out for me, type of thing. Because that was a lot of change for a kid to deal with and not understand. And then as things grew and became more and more successful, it was like, okay, he needs to be out of school for a week because he's got to go to LA for the Grammys. Yeah. But he'll be back. And then, you know, hearing on the PA, the announcement that, you know, congratulations, his dad won over the weekend or whatever, you know, this is just a trip. So there was kids that like, were in awe of it, pissed off about it. They were jealous, you know, bullies and whatnot, thinking that I had all the money in the world, type of thing, you know. And so there was a lot of things to deal with. One attempted mugging, but besides that,
in school,
you know, in school, yes.
Oh,
you know, but nothing violent, as you know, as far as that goes.
Yeah.
But and I think being in the public school setting, and like just not coming from it, you know, being born into it, like you said, made all the difference in the world, really.
Do you think your dad and maybe your mom as well did certain things to try to keep you grounded as much as possible, or because you just came from, you know, you live 10 years of your life basically as a normal, you know, person, you know, did you feel like that you didn't maybe not even need to be kept grounded? Like it was just like you knew what the world was without this success. So it's like in a worst case scenario, I already know that, you know?
Right. And I was an only child at the time. So there wasn't much need for that, because I was smart enough on my own to understand that.
Yeah.
Because it was just me at home, you know?
Right.
There wasn't that much outside influence to think otherwise, you know? And just seeing my parents have to go through life and struggle, and you know, we were on food stamps and all that ugliness. Yeah. So I was instilled to be grounded from day one.
Do you think that's part of the reason that like once they started having the success and the money, they didn't put you in a private school? Like they're like, you know, look, you need to live a normal life as much as possible. People are gonna, you know, be upset with you, bully you, whatever. You're gonna have
I wanted it too. I had no interest in going to a private school.
Yeah.
at all, because I also knew in my path in life that I was going to do music as well.
Yeah.
I had discovered that at 8. I knew that is what my passion was, at that time. So, I wasn't even thinking like that. Private school was never interesting to me. I didn't know from it, so it was not something that I wanted to try. I was
Oh
cool
yeah.
doing my thing in Oak Park.
Yeah. Well, and plus as a kid, when you have your friends, and I can tell you as a kid who had to move around a lot, it doesn't matter if the school is terrible, if it's like a bad area, you have your friends there. You don't want to go to a new school,
Right.
So,
And I'm still close with a lot of them
yeah.
from that era. And I mean, like my wife, we met in Hebrew school. I knew her before everything happened.
Oh wow.
So it's just a part of my upbringing.
Did you feel like you had to develop some kind of what's the word, like maybe radar of like people trying to approach you who maybe are either trying to use you, don't have the best
Absolutely.
interest?
Oh yes, yeah, definitely had to have my guard up for a lot of things. It obviously started with wanting autographs and little things like that, and then it got worse and worse with um, just like people assuming things. And so, I just tried to ignore it and avoid it.
Yeah.
It wasn't worth it.
Yeah. No, I
just
hear
stayed
you.
away, stuck with my small crew of guys and girls and, my people, really.
Yeah. And it sounds like you already had your circle and you knew kind of
Mhm.
who to hang out with, who to trust. You didn't have to really go through maybe somebody who was just born into it,
Mhm.
into that life. They never really had a quote unquote, and I hate to use the term real life, but
Mhm.
I think it has to be, and maybe you have more insight in this because you've probably seen people who kind of grew up into it more,
Mhm.
that if you never go through life as like, a person who's not a celebrity or doesn't have any connection to that, and you just have to
Mhm.
develop your own friendships, your own
Mhm.
relationships, there is
Mhm.
probably a different degree in how those relationships are made versus,
Right.
post this, entertainment, Hollywood, whatever you want to call it, kind of way of growing up.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I love, hanging out with people who aren't number one fans of his.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely. Yeah. Cause I'm sure
That's never a good thing.
be monotonous. Yeah.
And in high school, when it got to that point, um, I started working at my dad and uncle's recording studio. And so I was able to do co-op at the time. They offered that where I could leave after lunch and go to work for the rest of the day. And so I would do high school in the morning, and I'd go to the studio and get food for all the rappers and whatnot. Those rappers just happened to be, D12 and G Unit,
Yeah.
and then I'd come back to school the next day. But it was just, um, there's no book for that.
Yeah.
It was just my world at the time, and it was a fast couple years, but there was some, really high highs and really low lows, but like I said, that was, um, I graduated in '08, so that was '04 to '08. He was on top of the world at that point.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that long ago prior to that he was not.
Right.
So, I carried that with me.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure, especially, and I don't know if this is just because kind of like an age thing, but I feel like growing up as someone who grew up in the '90s, there was so many one hit wonders then. Like it just
Hmm.
seemed like the era of one hit wonders. I don't know, but it seemed like even if you like having a hit record is almost like just one battle out of a series of other ones. Like
Oh, yeah, one hit record, and then if you're really lucky, one hit album,
yeah,
and then if you get two hit albums, like you struck gold.
yeah,
If you get three, like
yeah,
you're untouchable.
yeah,
He happened to have like seven or whatever,
right, yeah. I mean,
and that's my uncle knew that from day one. From the moment he heard him on the radio, he knew
yeah.
who he could become and what he became.
Yeah, that's some crazy insight. Because I remember even at the time when Hi, My Name Is came out, I mean, I was, what was this, 19? Did it come out in 98 or 99?
My Name Is came out in 99.
99, so.
January of 99.
Okay, so I would have been 11, well, I guess 10 at the time, so we were probably around the same age. And I remember a bunch of, like, you know, older people I had in my, oh, this is just gonna be, this is a one hit wonder, you know, this is that kind of stuff. Did any of that kind of negativity did you guys hear any of that? Like kind of,
I mean, it was a lot of, at the time, you know, the white rapper thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's just gonna be a Vanilla Ice situation.
Yeah.
And it was like, no, wait till you hear this. Wait till you hear this other stuff.
Yeah.
It's not that at all.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, wow. That is crazy. Did your dad ever with you, you know, once he knew that you wanted to do this as like your life, you know, try to break down how the music industry works in terms of like making a career out of it, getting paid?
Absolutely. He did from day one. He was like, that's great that you can play everything. Like that's one part of it. But if you really want to get into the industry, you got to know production, publishing, you know, label situations, copyrights, all of that. And so I found all of it interesting, you know, beyond Eminem, beyond hip hop, you know, just the music industry in itself. You know, I was really into all those genres, like I mentioned. So, you know, the Bee Gees were fascinating to me. Clive Davis, Quincy Jones, Motown, obviously, how those people did it and made it happen in the industry and shaped the industry. You know, that was all fascinating to me. You know, hip hop was just one of the things that was really, really blowing up.
Yeah.
You know, for all those years, and is obviously the biggest thing now. But he taught me a lot of those things early on.
And it's got to be tough because I know just from like the stuff that I try to like be aware of and stuff, because the music industry has changed so much. You know, whether it was with 10 years ago, 20 years ago to now.
5 years ago.
Yeah. Because what's funny to me is like, really, from my understanding, and obviously you might know more, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, from the artist standpoint, producer standpoint, probably a different thing. But from the artist standpoint, really, they made their money off of touring. The album sales really was just like, you know, you got something for it, but the majority of that pretty much went to, you know, everyone else, right? I mean, and it was.
Well, it depends if that artist wrote the songs on there.
Yeah.
You know, that's a big part of it. A lot of big artists back then and even now, they don't write the material; they just perform it.
Yeah.
And not just, you know, in pop or hip hop, whatever. That's across the board. It all depends.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, touring, merchandise, all of those things come into play.
Is that one good thing, at least historically, from being more of a producer, where it's like you kind of are getting your money more up front than like, you know, someone else who's like, you got to kind of wait till the record sells. But if you're the one on the production side of things, you're getting paid while that album's being made pretty much, right? It's kind of like.
It depends. It depends on the situation that you're dealing with. You know, if you believe in the artist and you think that it could be bigger than it is at the time, you know, you might want to invest yourself in it as opposed to getting a quick payday.
Right.
You know? It really just depends on the situation. And obviously now with streaming and everything, a whole lot has changed.
Yeah.
You know, the days of getting like a hell of a, you know, production deal with points and whatnot on your first record sold means a whole lot different now when you're not actually selling records.
Yeah.
You know, but you're getting a ton of streams.
Yeah.
It just means something different. So, you know, the negotiations of everything changes.
Yeah, it almost seems like, you know, the need for quote unquote a record deal seems like kind of like almost, you know, an archaic kind of idea now, because you can just distribute yourself. I mean, obviously in terms of the marketing team, you know, the average guy doesn't have, you know, $1 million to throw at a marketing campaign.
Right.
But in terms of distribution with everything streaming, I feel like that's heavily in the, you know, independent artist's favor.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you definitely can do anything you want now.
Yeah.
Which is why it's so amazing to be an artist and a musician right now, but it's also why there's a lot of trash out there right now.
Yeah.
Because it's like that.
Yeah.
Boom. You write a song, it's out there.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to put something out, whereas back in the day that, you can think of, if you didn't have money to go to a professional studio and record, and this is why too, which it's kind of interesting thing, like people just recorded a demo that nobody was. If you're an average Joe, you're not recording an entire album. You're recording a demo at most.
Right. Yeah. Studio time can be costly.
Yeah.
In early days, tape could be very costly, or it was, and still is very costly.
Yeah.
So that is another reason why, people don't understand why music was so much better back then. And there's amazing music right now. Obviously, you have to just search for it a little bit harder. But like, you had to go in the studio and give it your all.
Yeah.
Because time was money. Like, if you don't have a hard drive of 2 terabytes and you could just try and try, it's great for honing in your craft. But as far as a player, because I'm a player first, that's what's happening.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And you had to play your heart out or sing your heart out.
Yeah. And then I'm sure, and I'm sure, if you didn't have the, because of the time, the money, that really was a thing stopping people. I'm sure, like, if I have to really, really, really think I can make something happen with this, if I'm going to, invest that money, that time, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's definitely the pros and cons, man. I mean, it's with everything. I think it's just,
Yeah, it's all right there. Everything makes sense. Those are just some of the reasons to why.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure that's why too, like, record labels aren't, you used to hear back in the day, like, people would get signed before they even had any radio play. Like, it's just, we think this person can be something, so we're going to give them like a crazy record deal. And then, the old Lifetime movie story of finding like a waitress in a diner or something. And that kind of thing would never happen now. It's just, you really gotta prove that you can do numbers before anybody's going to really.
And that sucks. That sucks, because there's so much great talent that have very little numbers.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be like that. Like that, you literally have to do all of the work that is outside of being an artist and musician, that, is marketing and promotion and all that normally, back in the day, you wouldn't have to worry about, but you have to do all those things now.
Yeah.
For anybody to even pay attention in the big leagues per se.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. It's really, really wild. It's like you got to get to that point, and then they're like, okay, here you go.
Yeah.
It'll take you here. But thank you for doing everything.
Yeah. Then by the time you've taught yourself all these other skills, then, then they give you, it is an interesting dynamic, but I don't know. It's funny because, as a kid and stuff, I didn't really understand how I thought musicians just got like a weekly paycheck like everybody else, I'm clocking in at the studio, for gonna do my 8 hours in the studio,
that was Motown though. That is how they did it at Motown.
Wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
They give you $20 here and there. Play guitar on it. Oh shit, it's a huge hit.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Now I gotta sue them.
Right. Yeah, to get more money.
But, they were all going with it at the time. So.
Yeah, man. It's
they wouldn't think it like that.
It's a wild industry. It's always changing for sure. Are you an optimist in that, or were you stand in the constant change? Like, where is your feeling in that?
Yeah, seeing how much has changed so quickly, it's more of adapting. The name of the game, in my opinion right now, is adapting. It's never going to be what it was. We've gone too far.
Yeah.
Because, Apple Music is only 5 years old.
Yeah.
That's how much has changed.
Yeah, that's
so
pretty
quickly.
crazy to think about.
Yeah, and so it's really, you have to change your whole attitude and mindset, because um, it's not going to be selling millions of records, like, as far as one of the main goals. It could happen, it does happen, um, but like, you can't think like that when you're coming up with a project. And in this world now, you can't even think about touring.
Yeah,
You know,
right. Yeah, exactly.
like, that's out the window right now. So it is a
Yeah,
hot mess. It is no bueno,
yeah,
but you can still make great music and great art. And if it's real and it's got something to say, people will listen.
yeah.
You
That's
know,
a
you got to have a little bit of that marketing in there, and it'll get out there and hopefully catches on. I mean,
yeah.
we did Sean's record almost a year ago, his Little Victories record. We did it, just the two of us, all on our own. I did it in my basement, recorded his vocals in his basement, and we did a release independently, and we got all of our friends and family to be behind it, and social media and whatnot, fully grassroots as
Yeah.
much as we could, with some local PR and whatnot that was in the realm of what we knew we could do. um, and all of those things, we didn't know if anything would happen with it, but we just really put it all out there and gave it all our all, really, and it ended up getting on Billboard,
Yeah.
and that was groundbreaking for someone, especially as a deaf artist, that has never been done before. There's never been a profoundly deaf artist on a Billboard chart anywhere.
Yeah.
And we achieved that, and on iTunes and Amazon we got to number one, on the hip hop charts. It was Sean and Marshall and Royce at one point on the iTunes hip hop charts,
Yeah,
and
I
it
think I
just
remember
took.
seeing you take like a screenshot or
Yes,
something.
absolutely. And it was, unfortunately, it takes to getting to that point for so many other people to pay attention.
Oh yeah.
And then it trickles down from there. But like, we had to do everything to get to that point. That's just the name of the game. But it also goes to show, like, we were able to do all of that, get on Billboard, just the two of us. So
Yeah. No,
anything is possible.
that is wild. Do you
So
think
that's where the optimism comes from.
yeah. No, I mean that's amazing thing, because getting on Billboard alone is hard, let alone being deaf. And because I'm sure his story is definitely really interesting, which I'm, how to really adapt in music, forget the marketing, forget the money, forgetting just music itself.
Right.
Like obviously you hear about blind people making music, but you don't really need to see to make music. It's not like it's not necessarily a handicap for the industry. If anything, some people could call it a strength, depending on.
Yeah. I mean, he feels it. And that's why he's been successful, is because it comes from his heart first, and it's never been a limitation for him. Yeah. It's always been like, I'll show you what I can do, and then some. And he also never gave a fuck, and that's why it worked.
Yeah. No, it seems like you really have to be content and cool with yourself. And that's one thing about you that, like, again, from the beginning of the conversation, that I felt you stand apart from a lot of other people that may have had a similar kind of experience than you. You don't, and not that it would be something to be bitter about, but obviously everyone's got their own thing. But you just you're like, hey, this is my life. I'm going to embrace it. This is who I am. I'm not going to sit there and fight against it or act like, it's something that it's not, and you're very comfortable in your own skin, which is very admirable. I mean, that's, forget everything else. I mean, that alone.
Thank you.
Is huge. So that's awesome, man. I guess, one other, just question. When all this kind of started popping off, was there ever like a vibe of an idea of you guys like moving to LA, because that's where more of the music industry is?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. We definitely looked at places and looked at schools out there when I was younger. But then everyone was like, let's go back home. Like, besides my parents, Marshall came back home. You know what I mean? Like that was the thing. It was everybody was like, let's just go back there. That's
what do
where
you
we
think
started. That's where we're from.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things why I worked for so long.
Yeah, there does seem to be something about here. I don't know, whether it's work ethic or whatever. I lived in LA for a little bit. And one thing I noticed is like, obviously they have the industry there, but like I'd be, communicating with people. Like I was grinding like, oh man, let's get in the studio. Let's do this. Let's do that. And it seemed like everybody that was like living out there and that was just their life. They didn't have that drive really. It was just like, and it seems like here there's just so much work ethic. It's just like, there's so much passion. And I feel like maybe you do, for the people who do live out there, maybe they do lose their edge a bit, where this staying here kind of keeps you grounded.
It does keep you grounded. I mean, we're the Motor City.
Yeah.
We've come back from nothing.
Yeah.
So that's just a part of who we are as Detroiters.
Yeah. Seems to be part of the DNA for sure.
Yeah, you can't craft that. You just got to have it in your DNA, really.
The comeback kid for sure.
And your spirit. It's just can't really describe it.
Yeah.
It's there.
It's definitely something that makes us unique, that's for sure. Absolutely, man. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming on. I want to, I know that you got a few projects out. Anything you want to plug, anything you want, how can the people, get to your music, get to the stuff that you want them to get to? Just, love you to take a moment to
sure
give a plug.
Yeah. You can hit me up on all the social media channels, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. They're all at Mr. Jake Bass, Mr. Jake Bass. You can find me there. My website is bocajmusic.com. You can check out my discography and, my bio and all that ugliness over there. Check out everything I'm working on. It's all out there.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. Cheers to you, my friend.
Cheers to you. Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, man. We'll have to do it again sometime, man.
Anytime.
Yes. Salute, sir.
Anything I need,
that's just me, that's just me.
It's the way that it be,
that's just me, that's just me.
Only benefiting me,
that's just me, that's just me. I can't help it, I'm just selfish.
It's not about you,
that's just me, that's just me.
It's not about you,
that's just me, that's just me.
Said it's not about you,
that's just me, that's just me.
You know I can't help it, I'm just selfish. Sick of playing nice, I'm better than y'all. You want my respect, I want my TED Talk. You working for a jet, well, I deserve a jet. My whole list of goals I'm trying to check off. Whole sheet of hits, no acid tabs. I'ma bleed for this, check the plasma lab. And I ain't big tough, just an average cat. But I don't need a strip club to clap gas. That is facts, but is it though? I said I'm a cat, I'm just kidding, ho. I run this rap shit on my tiptoes, and you ain't doing jack like that bitch roll. Anything I need,
that's just me, that's just me.
It's the way that it be,
that's just me, that's just me.
Only benefiting me,
that's just me, that's just me. I can't help it, I'm just selfish.
Not about you,
that's just me, that's just me.
It's not about you,
that's just me, that's just me.
Said it's not about you,
that's just me, that's just me.
You know I can't help it, I'm just selfish.
I don't give a fuck.
No, I don't give a fuck.
Never gave a fuck.
Don't press your luck, bitch.
I won't even entertain any thoughts that's in your brain. If it don't involve me, then say your breath and give me space. I don't do the hoopla, I care about your new job. You can hit that floppy disk, save that shit and move on. That's just who I am inside, at least it's been identified. Paper to the maximum, problems getting minimized. Sharper than a dinner knife, now I'm feeling energized. Say goodbye to all my cares and hello to this enterprise. Me and Tony killing shit, we been this way, we still in shit. Even this year, Milwaukee, they got AIDS, ain't as ill as this.
Anything I need,
That's just me, that's just me.
it's the way that it be,
That's just me, that's just me.
Only benefiting me,
That's just me, that's just me. I can't help it, I'm just selfish.
Not
That's just me, that's just me.
It's not about you.
That's just me, that's just me.
Said it's not about you.
That's just me, that's just me.
You know I can't help it.